July 16, 1944, Peenemünde Airfield, Germany. Lieutenant Heini Dittmar gripped the control stick of his Messerschmitt Me-163 Comet. The small Delta Wing plane trembled beneath him as its Walter HWK-109, a 509 rocket engine, sputtered to life. Thick clouds of toxic hydrazine exhaust billowed from the rear, searing the tarmac. Dittmar's gloved hands tightened. This was his third test flight in the Comet, and he knew the risks. The plane could reach speeds no other fighter could match, over 600 miles per hour, but it was a death trap. He taxied down the runway, the engine's high-pitched whine drowning out all other sound. At 180 miles per hour, he pulled back. The Comet leaped into the sky, leaving a trail of smoke. Below, engineers watched, their faces a mix of pride and fear. They knew Dittmar might not return. The Me-163 was no ordinary fighter. It was the world's first operational rocket-powered aircraft, a product of Germany's desperate push for wonder weapons as World War II turned against it. By 1944, the Luftwaffe was crumbling. Allied bombers pounded German cities daily. American P-51 Mustangs and British Spitfires dominated the skies. The Comet was meant to change that. It would climb faster, fly higher, and outrun any enemy plane. It would intercept Allied bomber formations before they reached their targets. But the Comet's speed came at a terrible cost. Its rocket engine used a volatile mix of hydrazine hydrate, called T-Stoff, and hydrogen peroxide, C-Stoff. Fuel so dangerous they could explode on contact with spark. Its flight time was limited to just 8 minutes, and its landing gear was jettisoned after takeoff, forcing pilots to land on a skid, a maneuver that killed more men than enemy fire. The origins of the Comet trace back to 1936, when German aerodynamicist Alexander Lippisch began designing rocket-powered gliders. Lippisch had long been fascinated by Delta Wing designs, believing they offered superior speed and stability. His early prototypes, like the DFS-194, were small, unpowered gliders used to test Delta Wing aerodynamics. These gliders were launched from the belly of larger aircraft, allowing Lippisch to study how the Delta Wing performed at high speeds. The DFS-194 had a wingspan of 23 feet and a fuselage length of 15 feet, made of lightweight aluminum and plywood. It proved that Delta Wings could reduce drag and improve maneuverability, key traits for a fast fighter. But as World War II intensified, the Luftwaffe saw potential in Lippisch's work beyond glider tests. In 1941, they commissioned Messerschmitt to develop a rocket-powered fighter based on his designs. The goal was simple: build a plane that could reach Allied bombers quickly, shoot them down, and return to base, all before running out of fuel. The technical challenges were staggering. First, there was the engine. Rocket engines in the 1940s were crude, unreliable devices. The Walter HWK-109-509, designed by Helmuth Walter, was no exception. It used a hot cycle system where T-Stoff and C-Stoff were mixed in a combustion chamber. The reaction produced superheated steam, reaching 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, that was expelled through a nozzle to generate thrust. The engine could produce 3,750 pounds of thrust, enough to propel the Comet to 620 miles per hour, but it was a nightmare to handle. T-Stoff was corrosive. It burned skin on contact and ate through aluminum if left unwashed. C-Stoff was even worse. It exploded if mixed with organic materials like oil, cloth, or even human sweat. Ground crews wore thick rubber suits, neoprene gloves, and face masks with filtered air when fueling the Comet. Even a small spill required teams to douse the area with water and neutralizing agents. In one incident at Piedmont, a drop of sea star fell on a mechanic's boot. The boot disintegrated, and the mechanic suffered third-degree burns on his foot. Then there was the airframe. The Comet was built for speed, not comfort. Its fuselage was just 20 feet long, with a wingspan of 30 feet. The delta wing was made of thin aluminum alloy, 1.5 millimeters thick in some areas, lightweight but fragile. A single bullet could puncture the wing and bring the plane down. The cockpit was tiny, barely 2 feet wide and 3 feet long, barely big enough for a single pilot. Visibility was poor. The canopy was small, and the delta wing blocked the pilot's view of the ground during landing. The plane had no radar, relying on ground controllers to guide it to enemy formations. It had no ejection seat, initially. Later Mi-163B models added primitive version, and early prototypes had no parachute. Engineers believed the plane's speed made bailing out impossible. To save weight, engineers removed the landing gear entirely. Instead, the Comet took off from a wheel dolly, a metal frame with 2 4-foot diameter wheels. That was jettisoned once airborne. For landing, it used a skid under the fuselage, a design borrowed from gliders but adapted for a rocket plane. The skid was made of steel, coated in rubber to absorb impact, but landing a 4,000-pound plane on a 6-foot-long skid at 120 miles per hour was a feat even experienced pilots struggled with. One wrong move, hitting a pothole, tilting the wings too far, or touching down too hard, and the plane would flip, crushing the pilot in the cockpit. The first prototype, the Mi-163V1, flew in September 1941. It was a glider with a small auxiliary rocket engine, producing just 900 pounds of thrust, used to test basic handling. The flight lasted just 3 minutes, reaching 250 miles per hour and 10,000 feet, but proved the delta wing design worked. By 1942, the V4 prototype had a more powerful engine, 2,000 pounds of thrust, and could reach 500 miles per hour, but accidents were common. In August 1942, test pilot Rudolf Opitz crashed the V4 after the engine failed mid-flight. He was flying at 30,000 feet when the engine cut out. The Comet glided for 20 miles, but Opitz lost control during landing. The plane flipped, and he suffered a broken back. He survived, but the plane was destroyed. Another pilot, Wolfgang Spate, later a Comet ace, narrowly escaped death when his Comet's fuel tank ruptured during a test flight. T-stuff leaked into the cockpit, and Spate bailed out just before the plane exploded. He landed in a field, unharmed, but the Comet was reduced to a pile of twisted metal. Despite the risks, the Luftwaffe pressed forward. In 1943, they formed Jagerschwader 400 JG400, the first unit dedicated to flying the Comet. The unit was based at Piedmont, a remote airfield on the Baltic coast, far from Allied bombers that targeted German aircraft factories. Pilots were hand-picked for their skill and bravery. Most were experienced glider pilots from units like the Luftwaffe's Angstschau, used to handling unpowered aircraft and making precise landings. But even they struggled with the Comet. Training was brief, just 10 hours in a glider variant of the plane, the Mi-163A, a non-rocket version, followed by one solo flight in the rocket-powered Mi-163B. Many pilots died during training. In one incident in March 1944, a Comet's engine exploded on takeoff at Piedmont. The pilot, Lieutenant Hans Muller, was thrown from the cockpit but died from shrapnel wounds. The blast was so powerful it damaged 3 nearby Comets and killed 3 ground crew members. By early 1944, JG-400 was ready for combat. The comet's main target was the U.S. Army Air Force's B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-24 Liberators that bombed Berlin, Hamburg, and other German cities. The comet's tactic was simple. Ground controllers would spot incoming bombers and radio the comet pilots. The pilots would take off, climb rapidly to 35,000 feet above the bomber's defensive guns, then dive down at 600 miles per hour, too fast for bombers' .50 caliber machine guns to track. They would fire their two 30 million Malawian Quachas 108 cannons, each with 60 rounds, at a distance of 500 yards, close enough to ensure a hit, but far enough to avoid colliding with the bombers. The 108 Malawian Quachas cannons were powerful enough to destroy AB-17 with a single hit. Their high-explosive rounds could punch through the bomber's armor and ignite fuel tanks or ammunition. After firing, the comet would zoom back up to 40,000 feet, outrunning any escort fighters. P-51s topped out at 437 miles per hour, before gliding back to base. It was a hit-and-run strategy designed to minimize the comet's limited flight time. The first combat mission took place on August 2, 1944. 6 comets from JG-400 intercepted a formation of 120 B-17s near Berlin. The results were mixed. One comet, flown by Lieutenant Joachim Ziegler, spotted H-17 at 32,000 feet. He dove, reaching 580 miles per hour, and fired a 2-second burst from his cannons. The B-17's left wing caught fire, and it crashed into a forest outside the city. Ziegler pulled up, climbed back to 38,000 feet, and glided back to Piedmont. But 2 other comets crashed during landing. One, flown by Lieutenant Carl Schmidt, hit a rock on the runway. The comet flipped, and Schmidt was killed instantly. The other, piloted by Feldwebel Heinz Weber, skidded off the runway and into a ditch. Weber survived but broke both legs. The mission showed the comet's potential. It could destroy bombers, but also its flaws. It was too unreliable to be a serious threat to the Allied bombing campaign. As the war dragged on, the comet's problems multiplied. Fuel shortages became severe. T-Stoff and C-Stoff were in short supply, as both were needed for other weapons programs, like the V-2 rocket, which used similar fuels, and the HS-293 guided missile. By October 1944, JG-400 was receiving just 200 gallons of T-Stoff per week, enough to fuel only 10 combat missions. Many comets sat idle on airfields, their engines covered in tarps, waiting for fuel that never came. Maintenance was another issue. The rocket engine required constant repairs. Its valves and pipes corroded quickly from the toxic fuels. A single flight required 12 hours of maintenance, cleaning the engine, replacing gaskets, and testing the fuel lines for leaks. Ground crews worked 18-hour days, but they could never keep up. By late 1944, JG-400 had just 20 operational comets, far fewer than the 100 the Luftwaffe had hoped for. Pilot casualties were staggering. Of the 300 pilots trained to fly the comet, over 100 died in accidents. Most were killed during landing. The skid was difficult to control, especially in bad weather. Rain made the runway slippery, and snow could hide potholes. In one incident in November 1944, pilot Lieutenant Erich Schultz crashed his comet during a snowstorm at Piedmont. He couldn't see the runway clearly, and the skid hit a snowbank. The plane flipped, and Schultz was killed. Enemy action accounted for just 10 comet losses. The rest were due to engine failures, 27%, fuel leaks, 33%, or landing accidents, 40%. Even experienced pilots struggled. Lieutenant Haney Dittmar, who set a speed record of 623 miles per hour in the Comet in July 1944, barely survived a landing accident in September. His skid caught on a loose board on a runway, and the Comet spun 180 degrees. He was thrown against the canopy but escaped with a concussion. The Comet's speed, while impressive, was also a liability. At 600 miles per hour, the plane's controls became unresponsive. Pilots called this compressibility, a phenomenon where air resistance builds up so quickly as the plane approaches the speed of sound that it makes the elevator, used to pitch the nose up or down, hard to move. During a dive, the Comet would sometimes enter a tuck where the nose pointed downward and the pilot couldn't pull up. The only way to escape was to cut the engine and glide, but that left the plane vulnerable to enemy fire. In October 1944, Lieutenant Dittmar experienced a tuck during a combat mission. He was diving on a formation of B-24s when the controls locked up. The Comet's nose pointed straight down, and he watched his airspeed climb to 630 miles per hour. He cut the engine, and the plane slowly leveled out at 15,000 feet. He glided for 10 miles, avoiding P-51 escorts, and landed in a field near Hamburg. The Comet's wing was damaged, but he walked away with minor injuries. The Comet's combat record was modest at best. By the end of the war, JG-400 had shot down just 16 Allied bombers, 12 B-17s, 3 B-24s, and 1 British Lancaster. That was a tiny fraction of the thousands of bombers the Allies sent over Germany. The U.S. 8th Air Force alone lost 4,750 bombers during the war. The plane's limited flight time, just 8 minutes, meant it could only intercept bombers once per mission. If it missed the formation, it had to glide back to base with no fuel. Its lack of radar meant it often missed incoming formations. Ground controllers struggled to track both the Comet and the bombers, especially in cloudy weather. The Luftwaffe soon realized the Comet was a waste of resources. In March 1945, JG-400 was disbanded. Most remaining Comets were destroyed to prevent them from falling into Allied hands. Engineers drilled holes in the fuel tanks and set the planes on fire. A few were captured by the Americans, who took 12 to U.S. for testing, and British, who seized 5, who studied them for their advanced aerodynamics and rocket technology. The legacy of the Me-163 is a mixed one. It was a technological breakthrough, the first rocket-powered fighter to see combat, and the first plane to exceed 600 miles per hour in level flight. Its delta-wing design influenced future aircraft. The American F-102 Delta Dagger in 1956, the British Gloster Javelin in 1951, and even the Space Shuttle, which used a delta wing for landing, all borrowed from Lippish's work. Its rocket engine technology paved the way for space exploration. The Walter HWK engine's design influenced the V-2 rocket propulsion system and later NASA's rocket engines. But the Comet was also a symbol of Germany's desperation in the final years of World War II. It was a weapon built by a nation that had run out of options, a weapon that sacrificed pilots for speed and reliability for innovation. It was a wonder weapon that never delivered on its promise. For the pilots who flew it, the Comet was a paradox. They were proud to fly the fastest plane in the world. Many kept scrapbooks of newspaper clippings about their missions, but they knew each flight could be their last. Haney Dittmar, who survived 15 test flights and 8 combat missions in the Comet, later said in a 1965 interview, "It was like riding a bullet. You had no time to think, only to react. One mistake, and you were dead." Another pilot, Horst Gotz, who shot down 2 B-17s, recalled in his memoir, Every time I took off, I said goodbye to my family. I never expected to come back. The Comet wasn't a fighter. It was a suicide mission with a cockpit. God survived the war, but he lost 12 friends to Comet accidents. Many pilots developed nervous disorders. Some refused to fly after witnessing crash. Others suffered from nightmares about fuel explosions. In the years after the war, the Me-163 was largely forgotten. It was overshadowed by other German wonder weapons like the V-2 rocket, which terrorized London, and the Me-262 jet fighter, the first operational jet fighter, which shot down 542 Allied planes. But in aviation circles, it remains a cautionary tale. It showed that speed alone is not enough in a fighter plane. Reliability, safety, and practicality matter more. The Comet could outrun bullets, but it couldn't outrun its own flaws. It proved that even the most advanced technology is useless if it can't be used consistently, or if it kills the people who operate it. Today, only a handful of Me-163s survive. They are on display in museums around the world. Silent reminders of a bygone era. One sits in the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. Its silver aluminum body is dented, its canopy cracked, but its delta wing still looks futuristic. Another is in the Deutsches Museum in Munich. It's painted in the dark green and gray camouflage of JG-400, with the unit's insignia, a black eagle clutching a rocket on the fuselage. Looking at them, it's hard to imagine the terror of flying one. The small cockpit, the fragile wings, the absence of landing gear, all speak to the plane's deadly nature. Visitors often ask museum guides, how could anyone fly this? The answer is simple. They had no choice. The Me-163 also offers a window into the mindset of Nazi Germany in 1944. It was a nation that believed technology could win the war, even if that technology was untested, unreliable, and deadly to its own people. The Comet was not just a plane. It was a symptom of a regime that had lost touch with reality. It was a last-ditch effort to cling to power, even as the Allies closed in. Hitler and his top advisors, like Reichsmarshal Hermann Göring, head of the Luftwaffe, believed the Comet would turn the tide of the air war and save Germany from defeat. They ignored reports of pilot deaths and engine failures, pushing for more Comets to be built. By the time they realized the plane was a failure, it was too late. Germany was collapsing, and the Allies were days away from Berlin. For Alexander Lippisch, the Comet's designer, the plane was a disappointment. He had envisioned a fast, agile fighter that could protect German cities from bombing raids. Instead, it became a death trap. Lippisch was a scientist, not a Nazi. He joined the project to advance aviation, not to support the regime, but he later regretted his role. After the war, he was captured by the Americans and brought to U.S. as part of Operation Paperclip, a program that recruited German scientists to work for the U.S. government. He worked on delta wing designs for NASA and the U.S. Air Force, helping to develop the X-15 rocket plane, which reached 4,520 miles per hour in 1967. He never spoke publicly about the Comet again. Friends said he was ashamed of what the plane had become. He died in 1976. His legacy tied to a plane that killed more of its own pilots than it did enemies. The Me-163 Comet was a failure as a weapon, but it was a success as a technological experiment. It pushed the boundaries of what was possible in aviation. It showed that rocket power could be used to propel aircraft to speeds previously thought impossible. It taught engineers valuable lessons about aerodynamics, delta wings, compressibility, fuel safety, handling toxic propellants, and pilot training, the need for realistic simulations. Those lessons would shape the future of aviation, from jet fighters to space shuttles. The Comet's rocket engine design, for example, influenced the Pratt & Whitney RL-10 engine used in the Centaur rocket stage and the SpaceX Merlin engine used in the Falcon 9 rocket. Its delta-wing aerodynamics helped engineers design planes that could fly at supersonic speeds, like the Concorde, and land safely at high speeds, like the Space Shuttle. As we look back on the Comet, we are reminded of the cost of innovation. Progress often comes with risk, but that risk should never be borne by those who have no choice. The Comet's pilots were not just soldiers, they were guinea pigs. They flew a plane they knew was dangerous because their country asked them to. Many died, their names forgotten by history. But their sacrifice should not be. It is a reminder that even the most advanced technology is worthless if it does not prioritize human life. The Comet's engineers could have added better landing gear, safer fuels, or more reliable engines, but they were rushed by the Luftwaffe, who wanted the plane in combat as soon as possible. The result was a plane that killed the very men it was supposed to protect. The Me-163 Comet was a plane that outran bullets, but it could not outrun its own legacy. It remains a symbol of Germany's World War II desperation, a weapon that promised much but delivered little. It is a cautionary tale for engineers, military leaders, and anyone who believes technology alone can win a war. In the end, the Comet's greatest lesson is a simple one. Speed and power are meaningless without reliability, safety, and respect for the lives of those who use them. July 16, 1944, the day Hanny Dittmar took his third test flight, ended well. He landed safely. The Comet skid scraping across the Piedmont tarmac. The engineers cheered. They had expected another crash. Dittmar climbed out of the cockpit, his face pale but uninjured. He removed his flight helmet, revealing a sweat-soaked forehead. He would fly the Comet again for more times before the war ended. He survived, but many of his fellow pilots did not. Their names are etched in a small memorial at Piedmont, a stone tablet set in the ground near the old runway. The memorial reads, "They flew fast in the wind, but not fast enough to outrun fate." It is a fitting epitaph for the Comet and the men who dare to fly it. In the end, the Comet story is not just about a plane. It is about the limits of technology, the cost of desperation, and the courage of men who flew into danger because they had to. It is a story that should be remembered, not for the plane's speed or innovation, but for the lives it claimed. The Me-163 Comet outran bullets, but it could not outrun the truth. Some weapons are too dangerous to use, even in war.